All right, so I moved to Dubai in November last year, and it was after I told myself probably for maybe 18 months that I would never do it. But lo and behold, I now live there, and I've lived there for the last 6 months, and surprisingly, I really enjoy it. But I see this narrative online of everyone thinking that they're going to move to Dubai and it's going to fix all their problems, solve all their personal problems, solve all their business issues, and they're going to absolutely fly. When in reality, that doesn't happen. And I think there's a lot of misleading information on the internet around why moving to Dubai is a good thing and what really you should consider if you're looking at doing it yourself. And I'm going to talk from my own personal experience, but I'm also just going to give you some pointers of what I've seen from people that have considered it. Um, and kind of the things you need to think about before you consider it yourself. And the first thing should sound pretty obvious, but I think you really need to know yourself first. You really need to make sure that you are mature enough to be comfortable in your own skin. I'm sure you know what I say when I say the stereotypical online entrepreneur. You can paint the picture. You know exactly what that person looks like. They're wearing linen trousers, a linen shirt, their Loro Piana loafers with a entry-level Rolex on their wrist. If you move to Dubai and you're not comfortable in your own skin, this is what you'll turn into, and you'll be sucked into this world of spending money to keep up appearances, and ultimately you're going to be living way beyond your means. Um, it's so common for people to move out there without being comfortable in their own skin, and money ultimately becomes their whole personality. So if you're not comfortable in your own skin and you have a habit to spend a load of money and you haven't quite figured out who you are as a person yet, I really wouldn't recommend moving to Dubai because it will shape you into somebody that ultimately you're not true to. You're not living true to yourself. You're not living true to actually what you want out of life. You'll just get sucked in to this herd mentality of doing the same thing just because you think it's what you want, but really you won't have any meaningful relationships and you won't be working on something that really fulfills you. And the next thing I want to mention is if you're planning on moving countries, and really this kind of applies to anything you're going to do in life, if you want to move to a different country, you really have to have a plan and a reason as to why you're doing it. So let's say you currently live in England and you want to move to Dubai. Well, what's the driving factor behind that? Like, is it just to save tax? Okay, well, what does that look like? Do you plan on moving your whole life to Dubai forever, or is it like a tactical play for a certain amount of years? Have you got a load of money sat in the bank that you're trying to move across from your business to your personal? You really want to have this plan and know exactly kind of what you want to get out of it. As I said before, don't expect just to move to Dubai and be presented with all these opportunities by going to all these networking events, because in my opinion, 99% of networking events are not worth it. They're just a bunch of dudes on a boat talking about kind of aimless business stuff that doesn't actually materialize into any kind of profitable relationship for anyone. In some occasions it does, but the majority of them are just for, your Instagram posts. But you really want to have this plan, and I can lean on my own experiences here as to why I moved. And it was the fact that I've been running my businesses online for the last 4 years out of the UK. And I lived way below my means in the UK. I took out less than 100 grand a year in terms of a salary. And that's what I lived on. But my businesses were making, 100 grand a month. So all this money was piling up inside the business account. And I was paying, 25% tax on it, or roughly 25% tax on it. I don't know what corporation tax is now. Now I've left, that doesn't really matter. But I couldn't personally take any of that money out. And obviously it got to a substantial amount, which I'll come on to, that I was like, if I want to liquidate this money and take it out personally, buy a house, get married, do all this kind of life stuff to a certain degree, I need to move that money, and I didn't want to pay 50% tax on it. So my plan was move so I could liquidate all that capital, but at the same time, I'll move to Dubai for 5 years where all my businesses will continue to grow, and I'll build up to this end goal. And for me, that goal is sort of 10 million in cash and liquid assets that then I know I can live on 500,000 a year if those assets are making roughly 10% a year. I know that 10 million, that pot isn't going to significantly shrink. If anything, it should grow, and I have 500,000 to live on, which I don't think I spend anywhere near 500,000 now. But let's say I have 3 kids, a wife, maybe we'll reach that figure. And that's that's more than enough for anyone to live on and live a happy and fulfilled life. So that's kind of my plan, and that's kind of where I mapped out, was like, okay, I can liquidate the capital I've got in the businesses, take it out personally, put that to investments, put that into savings account. I make roughly 6% a year on my savings account in Dubai alone. And obviously I've got investments in the S&P and shares and crypto and whatnot that obviously, fingers crossed, touch wood, over the next few years, make more. But that was kind of the reason, that was the plan. And if you don't have this plan and you're just aimlessly doing it, then I think you're doing it the wrong way. I think you need to really get clear on exactly what you want out of a move and why you're doing it before ultimately you go and make that decision for yourself. And the next point I really want to raise, and I touched on it before, is moving to Dubai will not fill any voids that you currently have in your own life. If you're having any problems in your business, if you're having any problems in your personal life with relationships and whatnot, moving to Dubai will not solve that. Shifting countries isn't going to radically change things for you. Of course, there are the benefits of being, a new environment. There's a benefit of being surrounded by so much money. That can ultimately have its downsides. If you can get caught in the trap of comparing yourself, you can realize that you're actually an incredibly small fish in a very, very big pond. And wealth is everywhere in Dubai, so you're kind of made aware of it pretty much every second of the day. And if you're not comfortable in your own skin, coming back to the first point, then that can be detrimental, but at the same time, it can be motivational. But really the point I'm trying to make here is that if you struggle, let's say you live with your parents still, or you live in a flat in London or whatever other city in the UK, and you struggle to focus, you struggle to work on your business, moving to Dubai will not suddenly make you way more efficient or way more effective. If you can't work in the current environment you're in, you're definitely not going to be able to work in Dubai. Nothing's going to change. You almost want to fix those problems now and not have this issue with motivation, discipline, or anything like that, because ultimately, because Dubai is so big and you can get anything at the click of your fingers, and there's always something to do, there's always, parties to go to and events and beaches to sit on. Not that I kind of indulge in any of that personally, just because I'm not interested in it. The access to that just makes it way easier for you to get distracted, and there are way more distractions in Dubai. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're building something, if you're working on your business, majority of the time, it's just going to be you and your laptop sat in a room, and that room could be anywhere in the world. So can you not do that in your current location, wherever you are? Well, if you can't, Dubai's not going to fix that for you. So it's not going to fix any voids. You need to really solve those internally before thinking that a location change is going to be the thing that suddenly levels you up. I guess the next point I want to touch on is a really obvious one. Everyone moves to Dubai to avoid tax, and obviously that's probably the biggest advantage. And really, I guess one of the main reasons I moved to Dubai was to, decrease my tax bill. However, I don't recommend you move to Dubai just to decrease your taxes. And what I mean by that is you really need to look at the bigger picture of everything. You see people online make their first 10K a month, and all of a sudden they're like, I need to move to Dubai. I need to, get out of the country. I need to go and find somewhere where I'm not paying any taxes. Well, in reality, like, if you're making 10K a month, you're making 120 grand a year, like, you're not paying a crazy amount of tax anyway. And depending on your personal circumstances, if you still live at parents, if you still are sharing a house with friends, and wherever you live in the UK or anywhere in the world for that matter, moving to Dubai could actually increase your expenses, even factoring the taxes. Because if you live at home, you're not paying any rent, you're not spending that much money, and you're not an idiot by taking everything out of the business, or being stupid with it, then ultimately moving to Dubai is going to cost you more. The living expenses here are more expensive. You can live cheaply, but again, the distractions, everything comes into it. Going for dinner, buying groceries, buying deliveries, it does add up. So don't just move to Dubai to avoid taxes. You need to have this plan in place where it's like, okay, here's what my current living expenses are. If I move to Dubai, here is the amount I'll save, and this will be the impact of that. And you really need to think that through before just going like, oh yeah, I don't want to pay taxes anymore. Well, have you actually looked at the numbers? Have you seen what the savings you're going to make? Have you seen the impact it's going to have? And ultimately, if you are going to save a lot of money and you have like a business doing 7-8 figures a year, what are you actually going to do with that money? Like, is it a case of you then having access to all this extra money because it's not in your business account, it's in your personal, that therefore you're going to go and stupidly spend it on Rolexes, car rentals, and, nightclubs and table service? Or is it a case of like you have the discipline, and this is where all these points kind of tie into each other, you know yourself, you know that you can move into an environment where everyone's spending crazy money every single day and you don't follow suit, and you're happy to put that money into a savings account and really stack up as opposed to just aimlessly spending. Because if you don't have that discipline and you've done it to avoid tax, you can spend more. It's just going to end in tears, to be honest. Like, you're not going to have any money left, and you might be moving home back to England quicker than you think. And I guess I did say I'd touch on, like, at what point did I decide to move to Dubai? And it was when I had, 7 figures across both my business bank accounts that were sitting there, and I couldn't liquidate that into my personal without paying at least a 50% tax on it. And my accountant sat me down, and I remember this very clearly. He took me for lunch, he sat me down, and he said, here's what your current business is doing. Here's what would happen if you wanted to buy a house, the tax obligations if you were to take everything out personally, and the track and the record, the kind of trajectory you're on with the businesses. This is how much that's going to amount to, and here's how it's going to compound in terms of taxes. So my advice is you need to move to Dubai. And it was only at that stage did I then decide, like, okay, this makes sense now. I've made a certain amount. I have a certain amount where I see a very quick, I guess it was overnight. I went from being, I guess you could say, a millionaire with having money in my businesses to then suddenly personally I had over 7 figures in cash in my bank personally. That was kind of the point where I was like, okay, this does make sense to do. And obviously, if I didn't do that, I would have 50% less. So it made a lot of sense. I kind of waited until, I guess, the final point that I was like, okay, and now is the time to do this. And it was at that point that I realized, like, I need to make the change. But look, everyone's situation is different. Obviously, there's other things that factor in relationships. My girlfriend, luckily, came around to the idea eventually that she wanted to kind of make the move with me. I guess the situation, I won't go into that, the ins and outs. But look, we're very happy, and we've made a good decision. We made some good friends in Dubai, which has made it a lot easier. But everyone's situation is different, and I wouldn't necessarily, everyone needs to wait until they've got a significant amount stacked up in their business account. But if you want to do it smart and you want to do it the right way, that's what I would say. And really, if I was looking like at the very, very low end, taking aside, if I knew I was disciplined, I knew I wasn't going to get distracted by anything in Dubai, and, maybe if I didn't have a significant other that played into the picture as well, I would say like 20k a month profit minimum is the kind of move for anyone. They shouldn't really consider doing it any less. And I would also factor into that 20k needs to be consistent. It can't just be like, oh, you made 120k and all of a sudden you're going to move. It needs to be a consistent amount every single month, so that then you're secure, you've got this backing, and that number is then only really should go up because your skill level is a certain level where you can just keep building on it. And yeah, I guess that kind of covers everything. And the last piece of advice I really want to give anyone that is considering making this move, whether that's early stage entrepreneurs, whether that's people that have just made their first 10k, or even people in, it's different if you've made a significant amount and you've got 7 figures in your bank account for sure. But my advice to you is, like, you will make way more money if you stop focusing on saving money through taxes and start just dedicating all that attention into putting it back into your work and kind of figuring out how you can make more. So don't get distracted by this at any stage. If you're making 10k a month living at home with your parents, you're in a great position. You don't need to go and move to Dubai. You can continue to build up your bank account. You continue to build up your business bank account, and then there will become a point where it makes sense. But really, the best thing you can do right now, if you're 10 to 20k or under 10k a month, is just building up your income, building up your skill base, that then you can go on to make more, have a big kind of nest egg, and then make that move, because that's the smartest move in my opinion. But yeah, I hope this helps anyone that's considering it, and maybe I'll see you out there soon.